Over the last few days, you will have been watching the details of what went wrong at Eskom at the Zondo Commission with Brian Molefe, Watsela Koko answering questions about how so much money seemed to go missing. There have been details about prepayments and coal mines and alleged corruption. But you also know there are so many other examples of problems at state-owned entities. There's SAA and the Land Bank. We could go on. Professor Zwelinzima Ndevu is a director at the School of Public Leadership at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor Ndevu, good afternoon to you. I mean, we've known for at least, 10 years longer that our SOEs, our Escoms, our SAAs, our nuclear energy company, our state diamond mining company, they all seem to have huge problems of governance. Do they have the same problems, or are there big differences?
Thank you very much for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers. You are correct. We have known for quite some time that our state-owned entities had serious challenges. There are things that cuts across. There are things that are similar to all of them. Weak institutions, weak people, weak control mechanisms that are in place that cuts across in all these institutions, where people in leadership either weaken the institution or they find the institutions very weak and do nothing to strengthen those institutions. There are also weak controls in these institutions, accountability in some of them non-existence, and also just no checks and balances in place.
I mean, you talk about weak people. Is this about politics? Is this about a skills shortage? Is this about something that happens in state-owned entities that doesn't seem to happen in the corporate sector? I mean, the corporate sector has its own problems, don't get me wrong, but it seems that state-owned entities have a different kind of problem.
Yes, I think it's not simply non-availability of competent people, certainly not. It's also not a simple answer of saying wrong people are appointed in positions, because some of them come with really highly decorated CVs, track record. But I don't know what happens when they get into state-owned entities. We all have high hopes that they're going to change these entities for the better. And nothing happens. In fact, most of them become worse than they were before, which is unfortunate, really.
Is it just about politics? I mean, let me put that sort of straight. Is it just a sort of politics that takes hold of our SOEs?
It seems to me as if people, when they are appointed as state-owned entities, no matter what their track records, when they get into these state-owned entities, they then want to be politically correct. They want to be in their correct political side, and therefore forgets the basic principles of making sure that these institutions are effective, efficient, and more accountable.
So then, where do we start to fix it? I mean, and you will know, Professor, perhaps better than I, how long the argument and debate has been about cadre deployment. I mean, I remember Karima Brown so clearly saying once in a press conference that on such and such a day the ANC's cadre deployment committee would meet. It's chaired by the deputy president of the ANC, and decide who gets which job. I mean, that's literally how things have been done for a long time. But there is a big argument in favor of cadre deployment as well, because it aligns the policies of government with the policies of SOEs.
Yes, I think the starting point would really look at meritocracy, the issue around people being competent for any position that they're appointed. The issue around political affiliation should be non-existent, or should not be a consideration when you're appointed in a position of that nature. So it should move from being a decision that is taken by the deployment committee of the ANC to a decision that is taken by the board of a state-owned entity. That is a competent board that is appointed that should take that decision, looking at the merits and looking at the competency of the person that is appointed. The mandate of that particular person and the organization itself, the state-owned entity, should be in line with the developmental goals of the country and not necessarily of a particular political party. And once we do that, we take politics out of these institutions, then we'll see improvement in the institutions, and some of them will function much better. But until that time, we are going to be deviled by these challenges that we're experiencing now with our state-owned entities. Some of them might need to be bailed out each and every financial year because they are simply not functioning. They are simply not delivering on their mandate.
I mean, we've had a commission. It was chaired, I mean, interestingly, a long time ago by Ria Pierre. She then became the National Police Commissioner. But from what I can recall, the recommendations of that commission were never actually implemented. I mean, nothing was done.
I think the unfortunate part with the number of commissions that we've had that have revealed a number of things that could help some of our institutions and certainly state-owned entities have never been implemented. And in most cases, it's because it is a prerogative of the president to decide on which of these recommendations must be implemented and which must not be implemented. If we want to follow these routes of commissions of inquiries, we should ensure that their findings and their recommendations are binding to all involved and all institutions affected. And then we'll see outcomes. But for me, these commissions of inquiries that we're appointing are just a waste of public resources that could be used effectively elsewhere.
You spoke about the people, you spoke about the politics. Is there any change to the structure of SOEs that could be implemented to get around those problems? Or is it another lesson that you can have whatever structure you want? You can have a 200-year-old democracy, you elect Donald Trump into power, you're going to have problems. It's the people that sometimes matter, not the structure.
Look, my view is that some of the structures will have to adapt, but you need to have the right people first in the system in order for you to be able to change your structures around. If you do not have the correct people, your strategy might change, but you will get the same results at the end because there will be no capacity to deliver on the new strategy or in the new structure in the case of SOEs. So the first point of departure for me would be to get people that are competent, people that know their mandate, what is expected of them, and people that are willing and have a drive to deliver. Then we will try and change these weak institutions, because we must be honest, also these institutions are very weak. They have been weakened over time, and we need people that are going to be decisive around putting them where they should be. Okay.
Professor Zwelinzima Ndevu, we're just scratching the surface of quite a big conversation, aren't we? Thank you very much indeed. Director of the School of Public Leadership at the University of Stellenbosch.